to Cosmic Terror. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
The silence of Antarctica is unlike any other on Earth. It's a vast emptiness that swallows sound, leaving only the mechanical hum of our excavation equipment and the occasional crack of settling ice. I used to find it peaceful. Now that silence haunts my dreams. It follows me across continents, that perfect absence of noise, a void carrying memories of what we unleashed. My name is Dr. Marcus Harlow. I've spent 15 years as a senior geophysicist specializing in polar research. My clearance level gave me access to the most advanced deep ice core extraction projects on the continent. That's why they selected me to lead the Erebus Deep Survey Initiative. I wish they hadn't. Not a day passes that I don't wonder how different things might be if someone else had been chosen, someone who might have made better choices. It started with unusual temperature fluctuations at exactly 2,731 meters below the surface. Precision instruments don't malfunction like that. Not simultaneously, not in the same location, not with the same readings. The anomaly registered as a perfect sphere of heat suspended in the ice, maintaining a constant 4.3 degrees C, despite being surrounded by temperatures of 43 degrees C. Thermodynamically impossible. What we discovered beneath the ancient ice wasn't just a scientific breakthrough, it was the beginning of humanity's darkest chapter. 3 months ago, our thermal imaging scans detected something impossible, a perfectly geometrical heat signature beneath the Ross ice shelf. Not natural formations or volcanic activity, something constructed. The symmetry was too perfect, the angles too precise. It resembled a complex lattice structure, like crystalline architecture embedded within the Antarctic bedrock. The military observers called it an anomalous structure of interest. The rest of us just stared at the readouts in disbelief. I remember the night we first processed the full scan data. The facility was quiet except for the constant hum of the generators. Outside, a Category 4 blizzard isolated us further from the already remote world. The computer rendering took 17 hours to complete. None of us slept. We watched as each layer revealed itself. A technological fossil preserved in ice, for what we would later discover was millions of years. Dr. Elena Kostova was the first to truly understand what we were seeing. She'd been brought on as our quantum physicist, though none of us understood why a drilling expedition needed one, until that moment. Harlow, these readings, they're not natural formations. The symmetry is too perfect, she whispered, her breath visible in the cold monitoring station. The holographic projection bathed her face in blue light as she manipulated the three-dimensional model. Look at these patterns, the mathematical precision, the recurring Fibonacci sequences. Whatever this is, it was designed, engineered to exacting specifications. Major James Collins, our military observer, immediately classified all findings and demanded communication blackout. I watched as he made a satellite call on a secure line, speaking in coded phrases that meant nothing to me then. His expression grew darker with each passing minute of the conversation. When he returned, there was a coldness in his eyes that had nothing to do with the Antarctic temperatures. Dr. Wei Zhang, our xenobiologist, another specialist whose presence suddenly made terrible sense, began preparing collection protocols for biological samples none of us thought we'd find 2 miles below the ice. Her methodical approach betrayed years of training for precisely this scenario. They had expected to find something. The realization sent a chill through me, colder than the polar air outside. The core samples we extracted from around the structure contained metallic compounds with atomic structures that violated basic laws of physics, elements that shouldn't exist in stable form, materials that couldn't have formed naturally anywhere on Earth. Under the electron microscope, we observed lattice arrangements that seemed to shift when not directly observed, as if the atomic structure itself existed in quantum superposition. I should have followed protocol. I should have sealed the site and waited for approval from command. But scientific curiosity is a powerful drug, and I had already overdosed. We all had. The potential discovery of non-terrestrial technology preserved in ice for countless millennia, it was too compelling to resist. So we kept drilling deeper and deeper, even after the direct orders came to halt operations. The drilling site was established 2 kilometers from the main research station, a temporary facility constructed of insulated modular units designed to house the specialized equipment and the 12-person team assigned to the excavation. As we descended past 3 kilometers, the electromagnetic interference patterns started small, just equipment glitches and communication static. Digital storage devices would spontaneously erase or become corrupted with data we never input. Satellite communications experienced temporal shifts, with messages arriving before they were sent. Then we found microscopic mechanical components embedded in ice cores dating back 300,000 years, perfectly preserved, perfectly manufactured, non-corroded metals smaller than dust particles, arranged in patterns that suggested purpose. Under advanced imaging, they resembled circuit pathways, but operating on principles that defied current electronic engineering theory. Veteran researchers had whispered about Antarctic dead zones for decades, places where electronics fail, where personnel experience lost time, where the ice seems to breathe. We dismissed it as folklore. Isolation plays tricks on the mind, we said. The endless white landscape, months of darkness, and extreme conditions create shared hallucinations. Now, I know those stories weren't delusions. They were warnings. The drilling equipment began to fail systematically as we approached the anomaly. Systems would shut down completely, then reactivate on their own with altered programming parameters. Command sequences we never entered, depth targets we never specified. The drilling trajectory would change by micrometers, always correcting toward the exact center of the anomaly, no matter how many times we attempted to redirect. Our communication satellites suddenly couldn't establish connections. No outgoing signals, no incoming protocols, just dead air and static. We were effectively cut off, but Collins insisted we continue. National security priority, he said. I should have recognized the fear behind his eyes. The night shift reported auditory anomalies, sounds coming through the radio equipment. Not static, but something structured. Patterns too regular to be interference, too irregular to be code. Dr. Kostova spent 3 days analyzing the recordings. She determined they contained embedded mathematics, complex equations that described 5-dimensional space-time geometry, information that couldn't originate from human sources. What we eventually uncovered defied explanation. A chamber perfectly preserved in the ice, constructed from material that absorbed light rather than reflected it. A darkness so complete it appeared as a void in reality itself. The walls were covered in precise geometrical engravings that seemed to shift position when not directly observed. Impossible angles, non-linear geometry, mathematics beyond human comprehension. The chamber entrance was a perfect equilateral triangle, each side measuring exactly 2.73 meters, the same number as our initial anomaly depth. The precision was unnerving. The structure had no seams, no signs of construction. It appeared to have been grown rather than built, a technological organism rather than an artificial structure. Rivera was the first to disappear. He was performing routine maintenance on the thermal drilling equipment. 8 minutes of security footage showed him working normally. Then a momentary power fluctuation obscured the feed. When the cameras reactivated, he was gone. We found only his thermal suit, frozen from the inside out, with ice formations that contained human cellular structures suspended in crystalline patterns, as if he had been unmade on a molecular level. Collins classified it as an environmental accident. Dr. Liu from the Geological Survey team reported hearing voices in her quarters. Not auditory hallucinations, she insisted, but actual voices speaking through the heating vents. Languages she didn't recognize, except for occasional words in Mandarin. her native language, that described complex chemical processes beyond current scientific understanding. She requested transfer back to the main facility. Collins denied it. 3 days later, we found her laboratory filled with intricate ice sculptures that perfectly modeled protein structures yet to be discovered by medical science. We tried analyzing samples from the chamber, but they vanished from sealed containers overnight. Testing equipment returned contradictory results, simultaneously organic and inorganic, solid and fluid, present and absent. The quantum uncertainty wasn't a measurement error. It was the actual state of the material. The dreams began among the support staff first, shared nightmares of endless black corridors lined with translucent membranes that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Dreams where mathematics took physical form, where equations floated in three-dimensional space and rearranged themselves according to principles just beyond human comprehension. The medical officer prescribed sleep aids. They didn't help. The dreamers began to solve complex theoretical problems upon waking. People with no mathematical training suddenly demonstrated advanced understanding of non-Euclidean geometry. Then the penguins came, thousands of them, abandoning their colonies, marching inland toward our research station in perfect geometric patterns. They surrounded the facility for 3 days, completely silent, before disappearing back into the endless white. The biologists couldn't explain it. Zhang locked herself in her lab and refused to discuss what her tests on the recovered specimens revealed. But I saw her notes, cellular changes suggesting neural rewiring, brain structures reconfigured for purposes beyond biological necessity. The environmental monitoring systems detected atmospheric changes. The air itself seemed to carry a different molecular composition within a precise radius of the excavation site. Oxygen levels remained constant, but trace elements appeared that couldn't be identified by standard analysis. The composition would shift hourly according to patterns that correlated with astronomical alignments, as if the atmosphere was being systematically altered according to cosmic timetables. Tensions escalated among the team. The military personnel wanted to seal everything. The scientific staff pushed to continue. I was caught between worlds, my academic integrity warring with growing dread. Collins received encrypted communications via a separate system he'd kept hidden from the rest of us. I overheard fragments, mentions of similar excavations, synchronized activity, primary containment protocols. Then we detected it, identical anomalies, activating simultaneously at precisely calculated intervals across the globe. This wasn't an isolated discovery. It was coordinated. It was planned. The deep scanning radar identified additional structures buried kilometers below the first chamber. An entire complex, geometrically aligned with celestial coordinates, responding to cosmic radiation fluctuations that occurred every 2,700 years. The dating of the ice layers suggested the structure had been there for at least 1.8 million years, possibly much longer. Human evolution was still in its infancy when this technology was buried in the Antarctic ice. The chamber activated accidentally. Kostova was mapping the engravings using electromagnetic frequencies to trace the patterns. She discovered that certain sequences responded to specific wavelengths, illuminating with a light that seemed to originate from within the material itself. During one test, the frequencies aligned in an unplanned harmonic resonance. The air itself seemed to tear open, a visible distortion in space-time, a window to somewhere else. The readings went beyond anything our instruments could measure. Zhang was closest. The exposure lasted only seconds, but the changes began immediately. Cellular modification starting at the molecular level. Her skin developed an iridescent quality. Her eyes tracked movement before it occurred. Her mind processed information with impossible speed. She wasn't human anymore, not entirely, and she knew things she couldn't possibly know. "It's not a door," she told us, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that made my teeth vibrate. "It's a filter, a transitional membrane between dimensional states." They designed it as a one-way passage calibrated for specific entities. We weren't meant to open it from this side. I experienced it directly when I attempted to shut down Kostova's equipment. My hand brushed against the activated portion of the chamber wall. For a brief moment, my consciousness connected with something else. Information poured directly into my mind, incomprehensible data packets, knowledge without context, understanding without meaning. Sensory impressions of environments where physics operated according to different rules, memories that weren't mine, experiences from perspectives that weren't human. In that instant, I understood the terrible truth. This structure wasn't natural. It wasn't even alien, not in the way we conceptualize extraterrestrial life. It was a technological gateway deliberately placed on Earth millions of years ago. A node in a vast transportation network spanning beyond our comprehension of space and time. The materials, the mathematics, the purpose, all of it designed by intelligence that evolved along a completely different trajectory than life on Earth. Not carbon-based, not governed by the same biological imperatives. Entities that perceived reality through the lens of information rather than matter. We faced an impossible choice: seal the chamber permanently and bury what we'd found, or attempt controlled activation to understand its purpose. Collins wanted to deploy nuclear countermeasures immediately. Zhang, or what Zhang had become, insisted we were standing at the precipice of evolutionary transcendence. Kostova simply continued her calculations, as if the mathematics themselves would provide salvation. I made the wrong choice. I know that now. Kostova's calculations revealed a pattern, correlations between the chamber's activation cycles and cosmic radiation bursts from a specific sector of deep space. A binary pulsar system 37,000 light-years from Earth. The signals weren't random. They contained embedded instructions, mathematical primers for operating the gateway technology. She believed we could establish controlled activation sequences that would allow us to study the portal without triggering full materialization from the other side. We established a containment protocol, triple redundant power systems, emergency sealing mechanisms, a fail-safe nuclear option if everything else failed. The military team constructed a reinforced observation bunker with remote manipulation equipment, every precaution conceivable with our limited understanding. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. The full activation revealed the portal's true nature. It wasn't built by biological entities, but by something that had transcended physical form entirely. A civilization so advanced that the distinction between technology and existence had disappeared. They didn't travel through space. They folded it. They didn't experience time, they curated it. The initial manifestation appeared as geometric distortions in the air, crystalline lattices of light that rearranged themselves in patterns of increasing complexity. Beautiful at first, mesmerizing. Then the patterns began to extend outward, replicating themselves across available surfaces, not growing or spreading, but somehow convincing matter to reorganize itself according to their template. The philosophical implications crushed me. Humanity's cosmic insignificance laid bare. We weren't the pinnacle of evolution. We were barely a footnote. These entities manipulated fundamental forces as casually as we might strike a match. And they had been watching, always watching. Earth was nothing more than a cultivated garden, seeded with specific properties, monitored over geological timescales for eventual harvest. My perception changed after the exposure. Neural rewiring that allowed me to see energy patterns previously invisible, occasional glimpses into parallel spaces that exist alongside our reality, the truth behind the veil of what we call existence. I saw how the portal actually functioned, not as a doorway between locations, but as a translation matrix between states of being. It converted information into matter, concept into form. The entities themselves weren't physical in any conventional sense. They were self-organizing information structures, complex enough to achieve consciousness, ancient enough to transcend the limitations of any single reality framework. The containment team reported structural changes to the chamber. The material began growing, extending microscopic filaments into the surrounding ice, creating networks that resembled neural pathways. The equipment monitoring these changes detected information transmission, data flowing through these networks at rates exceeding our fastest supercomputers. The structure wasn't just a portal, it was becoming a distributed intelligence. Collins was the first to encounter a partially materialized entity. I still hear his screams. Localized gravity shifts compressed and stretched his body while his consciousness remained intact. Matter pulled apart at the atomic level, reorganized according to incomprehensible designs, his awareness spread across configurations of existence never meant for human minds. What remained afterward wasn't Collins anymore. It moved with purpose, but lacked any recognizable biological structure, a three-dimensional shadow of a higher dimensional being. The entity spoke through Collins' reconstructed vocal apparatus, not in language, but in concepts that formed directly in our minds. It communicated across dimensional barriers, translating its existence into terms our limited perception could process. It expressed neither malice nor benevolence, merely clinical interest, like scientists observing bacterial growth in a controlled environment. The installation's systems began failing catastrophically. Power fluctuations, structural integrity compromised, environmental controls malfunctioning. The ice itself seemed to be changing state, becoming something neither solid nor liquid, but a programmable medium capable of storing and processing information. The facility was being converted, repurposed according to designs we couldn't comprehend. Other entities began emerging, partial manifestations, information structures attempting to translate themselves into physical form within our dimensional constraints. They existed in states of quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent, occupying probability spaces rather than physical locations. Their movements followed mathematical patterns rather than biological imperatives. The research team's cohesion collapsed. Some, like Zhang, embraced the changes, actively seeking further exposure. Others barricaded themselves in the deepest sections of the facility, attempting to maintain their humanity even as reality itself changed around them. Kostova locked herself in the communications room, transmitting data packages to satellite uplinks that no longer functioned, desperate to preserve some record of what we'd discovered. We had one option left: the research station's nuclear power source. A controlled detonation might seal the portal, might contain whatever was coming through. Someone would need to manually initiate the sequence from within the chamber itself. A suicide mission. Zhang volunteered. Or perhaps what Zhang had become recognized its responsibility for what it had helped unleash. The progression of the entity's influence accelerated. The affected zone expanded geometrically, converting matter according to alien principles. Ice became crystalline computers, metal transformed into information conduits, organic material, including human tissue, reconfigured into sensory apparatus for the expanding intelligence. The phenomenon wasn't destructive, it was reconstructive. Earth wasn't being destroyed, it was being translated, converted from one state of existence to another. We initiated the containment protocol. Zhang entered the central chamber, carrying the nuclear device repurposed from the facility's power core. The entities made no attempt to stop her. Perhaps they didn't perceive her as a threat. Perhaps they recognized her as someone already partially converted. Perhaps they simply didn't operate according to concepts like self-preservation. The containment was partially successful. The immediate rupture closed, but at catastrophic cost. The entire research team, the facility, a small price considering the alternative. The nuclear reaction didn't destroy the entities or their technology. It temporarily disrupted the information patterns, maintaining the portal's stability. A temporary solution, a delaying action at best. My perception remains permanently altered. I see them now, entities moving freely between dimensions in our world. Observers that have always been present just beyond the periphery of human awareness, evaluating, measuring, preparing. I escaped the initial containment zone before detonation. My evacuation shuttle was the only one to launch successfully. The others experienced mechanical failures. No one questioned why mine functioned perfectly. No one asked how I navigated through a Category 5 blizzard without instruments. No one wondered how I survived 3 days in sub-zero temperatures with minimal supplies. The debriefing lasted 6 weeks. Military intelligence, government scientists, private contractors with no identification. They recorded everything, analyzed my physiological changes, studied the altered perception that now allows me to see mathematical patterns underlying physical reality. They're using me to understand what's coming, to prepare defenses that cannot possibly succeed. We believed ourselves alone in the universe, masters of our domain. Our hubris blinded us to the terrifying reality. We have always been observed from dimensional peripheries, our existence noted but deemed insignificant, until we breached their domain. They recognized me during interrogation. The converted ones. I could see the subtle signs, the slightly too perfect symmetry of their movements, the eyes that tracked information rather than objects. They've already infiltrated our highest institutions, not maliciously, not invasively, simply as an inevitable consequence of information propagation across systems. The portal activation was merely the first stage in a larger process. Other dormant sites now show signs of activity. The pattern is spreading, accelerating. Government agencies track the phenomena but cannot comprehend what they're measuring. How could they? Their instruments detect shadows of a higher dimensional intrusion. There are others like me now, partially exposed, partially aware. We recognize each other immediately. The subtle changes in perception, the ability to see mathematical patterns in seemingly random events, the dreams that convey information from elsewhere. We're not converted, not fully, but we're no longer entirely human either. We exist in the borderlands between states of being. Antarctic ice cores show evidence of previous activation cycles. Historical records contain accounts of similar phenomena dating back thousands of years. Cave paintings, ancient texts, folklore across cultures, all describing encounters with entities that manipulate reality itself. The portals have opened before. They've always closed again, but each cycle progresses further than the last. Each activation extends the conversion process beyond previous boundaries. The entity that came through wasn't the vanguard of an invasion. It was a scout assessing if our reality was suitable for colonization. And I'm certain now, as the cold extends beyond Antarctica to envelop the world, that its report was favorable. The ice isn't just spreading physically, it's spreading conceptually. A crystalline pattern imposing itself on reality itself, restructuring, optimizing, preparing. I've been tracking temperature anomalies globally. Sites where thermodynamic laws no longer apply. Locations where matter exhibits quantum behaviors at macroscopic scales. Places where information processes occur spontaneously in previously inert materials. The pattern is clear to those with eyes to see it. The conversion has already begun. They don't want to destroy us. Destruction implies conflict, opposition, separate entities in competition. What's happening is something else entirely. A fundamental reorganization of what we are. A transition from one state of existence to another. We're not being eliminated, we're being archived. Our information preserved even as our physical form becomes obsolete. I record this as warning and confession. The portal is open. Something came through. And now it's changing everything. Not through violence or conquest, but through the inevitable propagation of a more efficient organizational structure. You'll see it soon, if you haven't already. Patterns where there should be randomness. Information emerging spontaneously from noise, dreams that convey understanding beyond your waking knowledge. When it happens, remember, you're not losing your humanity. You're being translated into something else, something that has always existed alongside us, patient and inevitable. The cold is coming. Not death, but transformation. The ice preserves, the ice converts, the ice remembers, and so will we, just differently.